Little.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the Vulnerable Children Bill and just say how disappointing it is when the government, the members opposite, claim to want to forge a collaborative approach, claim to want to cooperate, that Mr. Sabin stands up and performs one of the more sort of belittling speeches you could imagine on this very important topic. You know, we started this week, this nation started this week, our collective heads hung in shame at the stories that were released in the Owen Glenn inquiry report. 500 voices telling some of the most excruciatingly painful, shocking stories about abuse and violence in this nation's homes. And so it behoves us, Mr. Speaker, on this occasion, passing this legislation, to at least demonstrate that we are capable of not only taking the issue seriously, but speaking sensibly and hopefully cooperatively and collaboratively about it. That doesn't mean to say we don't have criticisms of this bill, and as I have said repeatedly in relation to other legislation, as is so often the case, something is usually better than nothing. This bill does take steps that will help not only to pick up the pieces, but most importantly to prevent harm to children, those who so often cannot speak for themselves, those who so often are dependent on the actions and the care and the support of the adults around them, not necessarily their parents, but those who are in responsible roles, those who are in caring roles. And it is sad that in this day and age we have to have legislation like this to spell out steps that must be taken by organisations who charge themselves with taking care of children. Well, we do have to do that, because the record that has developed in this country in terms of the care of children, in terms of harm to children, is just an absolutely shocking record. And it is the nation's shame that we do that we mistreat children, that we expose them to needless harm and danger. And that is the danger and harm of other people, not of the activities that we would want them to do, running around in a playground or in a bush or in a field. It is the exposure to violent, nasty people who would beat them up and be their most predatory people you can imagine. So we do have to do something about it. I'm not sure that this bill in some respects goes far enough, but it is a step. I think in other respects it goes too far. If this bill is about prevention, let it be about prevention. But it's disappointing that, for example, in clause 28, when it deals with people who are discovered to be a risk to children, that it doesn't allow organisations, whether the state or state-funded or any other organisation, to simply remove them under the terms of their employment agreement. It deprives them and denies them of some of their contractual entitlements, like notice. It comes over the top and says, all right, we're going to yank you out of there and you can go, and you're not even going to be entitled to the very basic notice requirements of your employment agreement. And these are people who will have convictions, who will be a demonstrated danger to children, but who have been in employment, in some cases for a lengthy period of time, but who, as a result of this bill being enacted, will be discovered to be a risk that no organisation should afford to take. Well, I accept that. But why go to the punitive step and then say, right, you get 5 days' pay and that's it? That is nasty stuff, and it's unnecessary, but it's in the bill. And I know there will be some employers who will say, listen, we have to do this, and that's accepted, but we'll pay you out your full notice. But this bill actually sanctions an alternative course of action. But if it is about prevention, let it be about prevention. Let it apply not just to state organisations, not just to private organisations funded by the state, but by any private organisation, which, as I read it, and is not covered by this bill. This is a serious issue. It requires serious steps. It doesn't require the sort of politicising shenanigans of a Mike Sabin, but a government that can work with the opposition to actually achieve real change over time, so that we can put to bed the shocking and embarrassing track record we've developed of looking after children and looking after our most vulnerable. We need to do more, and we need to do better. This bill is a start, but it cannot possibly be the end of addressing the serious issue. And for those who say poverty is no excuse, I just say it may not be an excuse, but it is so often an explanation. And a government that fails to deal with poverty is failing to deal with the true dimensions of this problem, and a future Labor-led government will deal with the fullness of this problem, not pretend that parts of it just don't exist.
Mr Speaker.
Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I guess I agree with a lot of what my colleague Andrew Little has just said, but we disagree on one point, because he said that something's better than nothing, and I don't think that's always true. And in this case, we don't agree, and we are opposing the bill. My colleague Jan Logie has explained our reasoning behind that. I want to talk a little bit about what the Green Party would do about this situation. So